Welcome to YouTube's biggest channel when it comes to reviews. Today we're following up on the first episode we did a couple of days ago. We're gonna revisit the first episode and take a look at the i5 4590S. Following our first episode, came to the conclusion that the cooler was incorrectly mounted, so I went into eBay and bought a new one, the Arctic Freezer 13. It's a single cooler, so there is no exhaust, but there is a big intake, like 99 millimeters, and it does a bit of a better job when it comes to ensuring the CPU is cool. The previous one had a stock cooler, which has been taken off. The paste has been cleaned with isopropylic alcohol, isopropanol. It's a very good solution for cleaning residues. Let's talk about the length of the test basically. So as per the original episode, I've run this stress test 10 times. Intel burn test 2.54 by Agent God. It's a freeware which also works for Intel and AMD processors, so don't get confused by the name. What it does basically, it stresses your CPU until it cannot work anymore. So I have a couple of ways to test it. You got standard, you got maximum. I do recommend 10 passovers, so with the maximum amount of RAM memory. And as a side note, personal experience, if you are recording this and doing the stress test at the same time, might be a good idea start recording first, because it's gonna take a bit of RAM. Then set the maximum amount of RAM used by the software to fully stress it, otherwise you'll hit an error. The test is gonna be sped up by about 2000 times. Let's talk about the specs. As before, the i5 459S, it's a quad-core 4-thread CPU, so no hyper threading on this one. It's running at a clock speed of 3 GHz, and if you watched the first video, you probably noticed that it was running at a constant 2.6 GHz because it was thermal throttling. Now, because of the changes, because of the better cooling solution, it's the same pace as before in the original one. That's the whole point. But because of this, it can actually boost to a higher speed. For example, there will be some parts where it goes to 3.2, so that's about 300 megahertz boost, which is great, and also can reach maximums of 3.6. So the whole idea behind it is more megahertz equals more frames. Temperature wise, unlike the first test, which I do recommend watching for the gigs, it's running at a much lower temperature nowadays. I was noticing a maximum of 64, I would say an average of 60s, unlike before, where maximums were like straight away 90s. It was still running, but obviously it was thermal throttling. Idle temperatures were about 30 degrees Celsius as far as I remember. TDP, I would say it's an average of 40, 45. This chip by default is 65. Comparing it to an i5 2500OS, which is one of the most recent videos I've done, I do recommend checking that one as well. Obviously it's going to be a tad faster, and you can tell the difference in gaming.